Whenever I start playing a new gacha game, there are four main aspects I use to determine whether I want to continue playing or not. Story, characters, gameplay and farming, and quality of life aspects of the game. To explain each of these a little better, yes, I'm one of those people who likes reading the story in gacha games. If you're not, you can just skip to the next sections, but the core things I'll be going over in this part are the overall synopsis and a brief overview of the setting and world. The main appeal of rolling the gacha in a gacha game are the rewards you can get from it, and while some games allow you to pull things such as weapons or gear, the main goal is more often than not the characters. From what the summoning gimmick is to the aesthetic that ties them all together, and how much character they actually have, they're all core aspects of what makes us want to get them in the first place, as well as, of course, how well they lend the gameplay. Here, I'll go over the core aspects of actually playing the game, explaining the class system, what the actual gameplay is like, if there's any gear I'll explain that too, and of course, one of the most towering parts of gacha games, how easy it is to farm. Last but not least, there are other parts of the game that are fairly important but don't fit into the other categories, such as quality of life aspects and the actual gacha. It goes without saying that what you look for in a game is entirely subjective, so I'll be doing my best to go over these things as objectively as possible, so you can decide whether the games I'll be talking about in this series are worth a shot. In October of 2022, a brand new gacha game came out on worldwide servers, which I promptly gave a try and applied all my qualifiers to. Our subject of today: Path to Nowhere. We wake up confronted by darkness, not only around us but in our mind. We can remember our face, our name, the core of who we are, but not much else. Alarms blare and wake us from the stupor of our dreamy haze. We've been attacked by a mysterious stranger and have had our consciousness repair program interrupted, leaving our memory severely damaged. We have to relearn everything about ourselves and the world we live in. A highly inconvenient happenstance for the chief of the MBCC. The MBCC is the Minos Bureau of Crisis Control, a special organization set up to deal with sinners. With its important part in the framework against catastrophe of this city, the MBCC is not only responsible for arresting sinners, but it also uses the power of sinners to deal with various disasters. Sinners are formed through having a mania infection, a strange mutation that begins with a mental disorder, where patients show varying severity of mania, paranoia, and other psychotic symptoms. Under the influence of these mental disorders, the patient's physical strength shows an abnormal increase as well. No effective treatment has been discovered for mania. Most patients' symptoms worsen over time, and they eventually turn into monsters called corruptors, with complete loss of consciousness and distorted bodies. The minority of individuals affected with mania who have a higher severity of mental mutation than average, yet retain their consciousness to not turn into corruptors, are what we know as sinners. They've acquired powers from their infection that far surpass the strength of ordinary humans, becoming a serious threat to humanity and society. Therefore, the government has set up the MBCC to hold sinners' custody and manage them. What makes the chief so special is their ability to use shackles, binding and trapping sinners to you, forcing them to be under your control and ultimately controlling their mania. We managed to shackle two sinners at first. Hecate, a cold and calm girl who walks side by side with the materialization of nightmares and seems to have a mysterious past interlinked with our own, and Hela, the most foul-mouthed child you'll ever meet who's dying to beat you to death with a metal pipe. No, I'm not joking. I will say, at first, I was really worried that this would just be an Arknights ripoff. It really seems like one from the prologue alone, but honestly, as the story goes on and we learn more about mania, the effects of this infection, its origins, and how it's viewed in society, the differences become more and more major to the point where you even forget how similar they seemed in the first place beyond the basic concept. Saying the story has a slow start isn't exactly the right term, but it's definitely very exposition heavy in the beginning. As well as being kinda confusing, our two sidekicks also seem somewhat gimmicky at first, the calm one and the loud one, and both are children. But after the first couple chapters, the story gets good. Like, good. All the characters are extremely well developed. The world manages to completely immerse you, and without spoiling too much, certain aspects later on end up even seeming Soulsborne-like, and it is gripping. Other than the third-person narration parts, the main story is entirely voiced, adding not only a layer of cinematic feel to the story, but also practicality. The reason I take so long to read stories in other gacha games is a mix of being a slow reader, having issues focusing, and honestly just not having the time to sit down and read. With Path, if there's a scene where characters are just talking to each other, you can put it on auto mode, prop up your phone, and treat it as a movie scene instead. All that goes to say is that the story is extremely well written and well paced. The ever-growing need for answers that she feels as we traverse this world becoming more and more prominent as everything around us only gives us more questions. The story of Path takes place within a somewhat futuristic dystopian world. I say somewhat because the futuristic aspects are mostly within the world and ambiance rather than the art and the designs. Character design-wise, their costuming is what I'd like to refer to as techwear light. Many of the designs present significant staples of techwear, a fashion style that combines functionality with style and the appropriate aesthetics. Pockets, lockers, clasps, and straps, as well as other useful accessories are featured in this style of clothing which uses special materials, but these aspects aren't overwhelming. Compared to other worlds that share a similar base aesthetic, the clothing choices in Path seem much more grounded in simplicity than complexity for the sake of futurism. Even so, this simplicity does a great job at showcasing aspects of each character's personality from a simple glance. Cinnabar and Demon's outfits seem genuinely tactical, both of them always ready and willing to rush into the battlefield for one reason or another. Zoya's outfit conveys a sense of confidence and casual yet notable power, perfectly showing off her personality as the leader of one of the most powerful and prominent gangs, the Legion. Horo being the younger sister of her right-hand man, constantly trying to prove her strength despite her lacking height, large weapon and flashy outfit compensating for that. Fox is put together and formal, perfectly suited for a lawyer. Joan's a laid-back and grungy vibe make her look straight out of Nana, ever so fitting for a rock star, and Anne, well, take a gamble as to what her occupation is just by this image. I only gave you a portion of characters as examples, but this honestly applies to all of them, and that's not even mentioning their development. At first, I'll admit, almost every single character seems like a cutout of an archetype. The gang leader, the lazy one, the snobby artist, on, as well as some archetypes that stem from harmful stereotypes, such as the childish psychopath yandere, or person who has dissociative identity disorder and one of their personalities is violent. But surprisingly, once you start to learn more about these characters, they no longer seem like a cardboard cutout of a trope, and actually have a pretty solid reason for being the way they are. While most of the units haven't shown up in the story yet, there's a game aspect called interrogation, which I'll explain better in section 4 of this video, but at face value, it's exactly what it sounds like. We interrogate a specific character and learn more about them. Not all characters have interrogations yet, they seem to be adding them more as updates come out. Quite a few of these interrogations go over the character's backstory, and some are just chef's kiss. They stick out from the rest. I'm not going to go too deeply into anything because if you choose to play the game, these are things that are much more impactful experienced on your own. But just to give an example, I couldn't care less about Victoria before. The childish psychopath yandere trope isn't something that appeals to me at all, especially if it's the entire point of their character, but her interrogations went over the trauma and abuse she's faced so well that it makes perfect sense why she's like this. Her childishness isn't treated as a joke or an innocent waifu thing either. She's just a deeply broken individual who's regressed into a childlike mind state as a way of coping with her traumatic past. An actual thing that can happen with people who've suffered through childhood abuse. And it's just dealt with very, very tastefully, her and others making it clear that the writing team put actual effort into researching the mental disorders some of these characters have, and treating it like something real that affects them instead of just a personality gimmick. Getting into the more technical aspects of the characters, the summon animation for them is just, we're searching for these criminals on a map, and then we're going and arresting them. First time I did a 10 roll, I didn't get why I had to drag my finger all over the place to see rarities of the units I pulled, but then it clicked, and it's honestly pretty creative. All characters have at least 2 base outfits, their normal one and a slightly altered jail one, which presents them in their prison uniform. Which one you see when having them set on your main screen will depend on if you want to see them with the outside cam or within the detention center, and that's just a nice little touch. When getting a unit, they can be one of 3 rarities: B class, A class, or S class. The in-game explanation for these classifications being how dangerous they are as a sinner. There are 6 gameplay classes they can actually be, these being Endura, the tanks, high defense, resistance, and being able to block 2 enemies instead of the usual one. Their role as a tank is self-described, many of them also having supportive abilities. Fury, the stable offense, able to fight monsters one-on-one and deal significant damage. Umbra, not exactly sure what to call them, but they're the most mobile out of all the classes, and some even change positions with their skills. They're pretty much the specialists of Path. Reticle, the snipers, having the largest range of attack and dealing ranged physical damage. Arcane, the casters, dealing ranged magic damage, and the class that most commonly has AoE skills. And last but not least, the support units who provide a range of possibilities such as debuffs to enemies, buffs to allies, and even heals. Within the 6 classes, there are 2 distinct types of units: those who have their class icon highlighted in red and those who don't. The distinction is a simple way to tell us whether they deal core damage or not, and their skill description tells us whether they eliminate 1 core, 2, eliminate them within a certain area of effect, all that jazz. But what does this mean exactly? Path to Nowhere is a tower/lane defense with a hint of a twist. There's only 1 target we're ever actually defending, that being the chief, and we can place down 6 units to do so. Sometimes this is pretty simple, there only being 3 lanes and the chief being at the very end, where it's easy to strategically plop down units and make sure enemies don't get to them. Other times, the chief will be in a spot where there are multiple enemy entrance points both ahead and behind them. Having only 6 units on the field oftentimes can't cover all these possible leak locations in a very practical sense, which is why you also have the ability to move them around. Stages will often give you the opportunity to move units about 25 times, but you can increase the amount of moves if allies are equipped with certain crime brands. Don't worry, we'll get into what those are soon. As per most games, the enemies have various stats, including defense and resistance, and follow the usual pattern. Those with lower defense will be weaker against physical damage, and those with lower resistance will be weaker against magical damage. You know, the basics. The aspect of defense in Path differs with the enemies who have cores. Cores in general make the target take less damage, no matter if it's physical or magical, and you have to break those cores in order to kill them off more efficiently. Of course, not all enemies have cores, but the smaller ones who do tend to have 1 or 2, or occasionally 3, whereas bosses usually have 3 or more. After breaking a core, the target is stunned and will take extra damage until the time bar runs out. Sometimes they'll immediately gain their cores back, usually in the case of certain bosses, but other times there'll be a larger window of time where they don't have the extra defensive wall. Another way to break cores is with the Dark Sound Potesta. Potestas are chief skills you can bring into battle and use according to how many cores you've broken, this particular one costing 2. You gain multiple different Potestas with offensive and supportive properties as you progress within the story, but can only bring 1 into each battle. If you clear stage 1s without bringing any support units from friends, even if you had a leak or 2, you can now auto-farm it. And oh boy is the farming great. All you have to do is go to a stage, click on Raid Multiple, and set it to how many times you want it to run it, and bam! Done! No need to wait for the entire stage to play out, no risk of error, nothing. If you're specifically farming mats to level up a unit and you'd gone to the stage that has to be farmed from their upgrade page, the moment you get as many mats as you need, the auto farm will stop and tell you so. That way you can choose if you'd like to continue farming or stop since you have what you need and not spend any unnecessary stamina. Path has the usual story and farming stages, but they actually have a few other playing modes as well. Broken Frontline is a weekly challenge where you can face off 3 different bosses, earning rewards depending on how high you score and eventually moving up to higher difficulties. Oblivion Pit is the dungeon crawler of Path. You can only play it once a day, and each pit has up to 5 stages. As you pass on to each one, your units carry over their HP, skill charge, or even death. From these pits, you get discoins as well as dark samples, a specific type of in-game currency. And finally, Tide of Ashes, which is a collaborative effort with your secret society guild that isn't permanently available, so I couldn't get any footage, but I'll link a video from someone else in the description that you can check out if you're interested. As I implied before, Path to Nowhere does have a gear system, but honestly, it isn't super impactful. They're called crime brands and give your units a couple buffs, one based on the slot the crime brand is equipped in, being a fairly minor stat buff, and the other based on having the entire set equipped, which can be 3 of the same, 2, or sometimes just 1. This being the actual effect of the crime brand. You can farm them from 3 different stages, all of which are open on different days of the week, and you can only do so 3 times a day with a crime brand specific AP system. Their drop chance is based on their rarity, the most common drops being B-class ones, then A-class ones, and finally, the rarest to drop being S-class ones. The chance of higher rarity drops going up as you're able to farm higher difficulty stages. I'm not gonna go over what every single crime brand does since there are quite a few, but really most of the S-class ones are very specific, niche, or even only giving temporary buffs. Of course, some are really good, shout out to Creative Bulwark, which gives you an extra block, but the point here is that equipping all B-class and some A-class crime brands is perfectly viable and won't deteriorate your gaming experience at all. Damage boost, support, attack, and magic damage. The only thing the B-class ones are lacking are defensive crime brands, but within the A-class ones, we've already got a couple of those. That's not even mentioning the crime brands you can buy from the Broken Frontline shop, and most of the best ones don't even have to be farmed for. When a sinner is upgraded to their 3rd promotion level, they gain an exclusive crime brand of their own. You can unlock these with soul marks that you can buy through the Oblivion Pit store that refreshes every month. As long as you're playing it at least semi-regularly, you'll be able to get these soul marks for the units you actually level up that high with no sweat. So really, if the setting of the game intrigues you, but you're someone who hates gear and was turned off by that, rest assured, I understand you, and I'm here to tell you that within Path, it really doesn't make a huge impact, and there's no reason to worry about a unit not being optimal because you don't have the best crime brands for them or anything like that. Staring at the home screen, we're greeted with a multitude of options, the furthermost buttons leading us to the Secret Society and Friend menus. Secret Societies are what guilds are called in Path, and don't worry, you don't need to do a bunch of activities or even interact with them if you don't want. The most you have to do is make daily donations of discoins or hypercubes, but let's be real, nobody's giving away their gacha currency, and occasionally help out other members by donating mats they need. Daily donations help rank up your society, which in turn gives you contribution points, which you can spend at the Secret Society store. As I mentioned, the only other activity you can partake in with your Secret Society is Tide of Ashes, which, as I said, I'll link a video below showing off what it is, since I don't exactly know how to explain it. It's just a collaborative boss battle, basically. The Friends menu allows you to give and receive friendship points, which you can use in the friendship store. There's the operation summary, which gives you rewards as you progress through the story. The Potestas menu, which allows you to look through them and level them up. The factory, which is fully automated and serves to give you some extra stamina, mania essence, and discoins throughout the day. And last but not least, your item menu. The larger icons are fairly self-explanatory, but we'll be taking a closer look at 2 of them in particular. First of all, we have the Bureau, which has the record player, a way to listen back on certain pieces of music we've heard throughout the game. The Dispatch, a place where you can send your units out to get certain materials, and occasionally even hypercubes. And this thing, which gives you an exclusive supply of 60 stamina twice a day. The archives are a bit more in-depth, with operation summaries of both the main storyline and event stories you can look back on, as well as Librum, a neatly organized folder of all the sinners. There are also 2 lore tidbit sections, Mirage, which gives you mazes to traverse as you unveil bits and pieces of certain characters' backstories, and Interrogation. This is my absolute favorite place as a lore fiend, using evidence, a certain currency that's provided to you both by dailies and within certain events. You trade it in for pieces of interrogation evidence, and Well, start an interrogation with a character based on that. There tend to be 4 phases of this interrogation for S classes, 3 for A classes, and 2 for B classes. The completion of each phase gives you 50 hypercubes as a reward. I won't spoil in which ones this happens, but you can fail an interrogation. I'm talking the chief straight up gets killed if you make the wrong choices sometimes, after which you won't get the reward. Thankfully, you can just play the phase again and won't have to buy the evidence another time, now with the knowledge of what the right choices are, and then get the hypercubes. These are such good little lore tidbits, and a great way to spend the time if you want more path but don't have any stamina to continue the story. The surveillance order is where your daily and weekly missions are, as well as the point ladder for completing them, which gives you a large amount of rewards that ranges from materials to stamina to chat stickers and even arrest warrants. The tickets of this game's gacha. That's all from this free version, but you can also choose to pay real money and receive even more rewards as well as an exclusive live 2D skin. The supply store is exactly what it sounds like and gives you quite a few exchange shops. The featured packs, most of which are paid, except for the daily free supply, which gives you 20 stamina and 2,000 disc coins every day. One being for the gacha dupe currency, the broken frontline currency, the secret society currency, friendship points, dark samples, and the crime brand shop. Of course, there's also a section where you can buy ultra cubes with real life money. They can either be converted to hypercubes or used to buy skins, which, yes, other than the skins you get for free, all the skins in this game have to be bought using actual money. Real moolah. It's painful. But speaking of gacha currencies, the grand moment of importance when it comes to gacha games has finally arrived. The actual gacha. First, I'll read the rules, then we'll go over the costs. There is a base probability, excluding guarantee, of 2% to get an S-class sinner, 18% to get an A-class sinner, and 80% for a B-class. When pulling on a rate-up banner, the chances of that specific unit being the S-class is 50%. For regular arrests, every 10 arrests will produce an A-class or S-class sinner. The count will be reset if an A or S-class sinner is obtained at any time. For regular arrests, if no S-class sinner was obtained for 50 draws in a row, the probability of getting an S-class increases. Every 80 arrests guarantees an S-class sinner. The count will be reset if an S-class is obtained at any time, and the probability of getting an S-class goes back down to 2%. The guarantee count of regular arrests will always be accumulated in regular arrests. It is separate from the guarantee count of other types of arrests and will not affect each other. Each single roll costs 180 hypercubes, meaning each 10 pull costs 1,800. Excluding progressing the story, getting events done, and stuff like that, when it comes to a consistent stream of gacha currency, by completing your dailies you get 40 hypercubes and 150 from your weeklies, as well as 60 from your weekly screen share. Yes, that's a thing, leading to an average gain of 1,960 hypercubes per month, and while it doesn't seem like much at face value, that's over a full 10 pull, and there are tons of other ways to get this currency. Earning certain amounts of points within Broken Frontline awards you with hypercubes, which resets every week, not to mention a total of 8 arrest warrants you can get from the arrest exchange and friend point shops combined every month, as well as 6 from the surveillance order, which refreshes every 40-ish days. So, all things considered, in my opinion, you're getting a pretty good consistent amount of currency, and the gacha has a decent spark system, but that is coming from someone whose first introduction to gacha was FGO, so take my opinion with a grain of salt and instead use the facts I stated to determine how good the gacha is, because my bar has been set low. And that is it for the first entry of my gacha review series. It was really fun making something different, and hopefully I managed to inspire at least one of you to give Path to Nowhere a try. It honestly is really good, and with it being out for only half a year on Global, I'm super excited as to what the future will bring. If everything goes according to plan, this will also be the first time I'll be able to upload 2 weeks in a row ever since I said I'd be coming back, which feels really good. I knew I'd be able to do it eventually, no matter how many technical issues and life problems the universe would throw my way. Surprisingly, that's it. I can't really think of anything else to say, possibly because it's 1 AM and I've had an awful headache all day, so I'm kind of brain dead, but who knows. Anyways, if you're able to, consider supporting me on Buy Me a Coffee at buymeacoffee.com/voidlessmind. There's a link in the description as well as my other socials. For now, that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you another day.